These lectures are not intended to give a biography of Goethe, but to show in what sense he was at once the most real as well as the most ideal man and poet that ever lived. I ask for the labor bestowed on this translation the mercy of the reader, and a measure of gratitude that even so much of the intrinsic meaning of a very valuable work can be shared by another public than the one for which it was written. A perfect translation would be simply a recreation, possible only to the genius of the author. Zeller of Berlin says Hegel could be translated into Greek, but never into English. No translation can ever bring out the fine psychological differences embedded in the deposits of language. But what enthusiasm, sympathy, and earnest study can do toward rendering a clear translation, I have devoted to this work. The fruit of my visit to Germany and of the honor as well as advantage derived from personal acquaintance with its author. S.H.A. Berlin, August 1880. I return to you herewith the manuscript of your translation of my book, which you entrusted to me. I have compared it carefully and find it excellent. It will be a pleasure to me if your work is printed in your fatherland. I am very much indebted to America. I can indeed say that no author with whose writings I have lately become acquainted has had such an influence upon me as Emerson. The manner of writing of this man whom I hold to be the greatest of all living authors has revealed to me a new way of expressing thought. Although I grew up in the study of Goethe and had much intercourse with those who have known him personally, I am indebted to Emerson for the historical view of Goethe, which taught me to regard him as the great phenomenon in the development of mankind. In this sense, I have sought in these lectures to represent him. Should you give this letter a place in the introduction to your translation, permit me to add a few words which are addressed to my countrymen in America. I have been told that many Germans in America undervalue their own language and read only English books. Without doubt, it is right and necessary to speak the language in which are decided the fortunes of the country where one lives, and which one calls his fatherland. But how much would he lose who would thereby forget his own language? Should my book as an English translation enter the household of such a German, it may be that he and his family will learn that a man Goethe was. It may be that he and his family will learn what a man Goethe was, and what an inestimable benefit it is to be able to read his works in his own language. May this book help to draw still nearer together the two nations of the earth. May this book help to draw still nearer together the two nations of the earth which have before them the most glorious future. Hermann Grimm. Berlin, May 1880. It is 99 years, almost to a day, since Goethe appeared for the first time in Weimar. It was on the 7th of November, 1775, when, in his 26th year, he responded to the call of the Duke, who had himself hardly reached his 20th year. Goethe, although even then enjoying the reputation of a poet, both in and out of Germany, was just entering that higher region of intellectual activity, and beginning that career in which for himself and for us he became what he is, and what is comprehended in the single word Goethe. From his advent in Weimar, the century moves on, stamped with the name of Goethe. Goethe has worked in the intellectual life of Germany as some great physical phenomenon might work in the realm of nature. Our coal formations tell of times of tropic warmth, when palms grew in this land. Recently explored caverns speak of ice periods when the reindeer was at home among us. In enormous spaces of time, radical changes have been produced in the German soil, which in its present condition bears so much appearance of eternal unchangeableness. And to carry our simile further, Goethe has affected the spiritual atmosphere much like some telluric event, which should raise the average climatic warmth a certain number of degrees. If this were to happen, we should have another vegetation, another kind of cultivation, and with this an entirely new foundation for our whole existence. Goethe has created our language and literature. Before his time, both were valueless in the world market of European nations. Such statements must, however, be received as referring not to the exceptions but to the average product. In the year 1801, when Goethe and his followers had already accomplished the principal part of that which could be done for the regeneration of the German language, Karl August still speaks of the pitiful German tongue from which Schiller has wrung the sweetest melody. Goethe himself, 15 years earlier, had spoken much more severely of the German language. When Goethe began to write, the German language was as limited in its general influence as the German national interest in our politics. The nation existed, had a silent consciousness of its worth, and a presentiment of its future course. But that was all. Among the criticisms which Goethe wrote in the beginning of his literary career, he speaks of the meaning of patriotism and asks how one could demand of such a feeling as inspired the Romans, who felt themselves to be citizens of a world-embracing empire. Any influence beyond our own borders seemed to us impossible. The English, French, and Italian critics notice German literary productions only so far as our authors, by way of addition to foreign literature, allowed their works to appear as a part of the same. Frederick the Great, if perchance he had the honor to be named at all, was counted in Paris among French authors and regarded himself as such. French was spoken in all circles of North. Frederick the Great, if perchance he had the honor to be named that. Frederick the Great, if perchance he had the honor to be named at all, was counted in Paris among French authors and regarded himself as such. French was spoken in all circles of North Germany, and it ranked as the second mother tongue. In Austria, the Italian language prevailed. Voltaire discusses in the article Langue of the Encyclopedia the peculiarities of different languages as forms of literary expression. And in this, the German is not mentioned at all, not until Goethe's Werther had been devoured by the French and English and had penetrated even into Italy. Was the possibility conceded in foreign countries of German literature of a higher rank? Attempts had often been made before Goethe's time so far to perfect the German language that expression might be found in it for the finer shades of thought. But beyond the personal circle, these efforts were unsuccessful. Klopstock, Lessing, and Winckelmann, while they availed themselves of the forms of the classic languages and of French and Italian, sought to create their own German, but all without radical effect. Herder had been more successful in giving higher qualities to German prose than any other writer, save Goethe. Herder, more than anyone assisted Goethe in producing a true, living German language, which later authors have been taught by him to write. This Goethe did by collecting together and turning to advantage the work of all those who had preceded him. Goethe would ascribe this service to Wieland, but he himself in reality cast all other attempts into the shade. It was Goethe's verses which made Schiller's flow. And he lent to Schlegel the fullness whereby he converted Shakespeare almost into a German poet. Goethe's prose has become by degrees, in all departments of intellectual life, the standard form of expression. Through Schelling, it has penetrated into philosophy. Through Savigny, into jurisprudence. Through Alexander von Humboldt, into natural science. And through Wilhelm von Humboldt, into philology. We are even indebted to Goethe for our present style of letter writing, innumerable expressions, which we now use without questioning their source, because they seem to stand so naturally at our command, would without him have been sealed to us.